up, Coba Fanatics? Today we are venturing into the South Pacific to the beautiful islands of New Zealand. I'll be discussing its primary wine growing region, Marlborough, as well as its most famed varietal, Sauvignon Blanc, but also giving you a tour of lesser known regions and giving you a heads up for what other varietals you should be looking for. If you're looking to taste, sell, or enjoy wines of New Zealand, this video is for you. New Zealand is a set of two islands isolated far in the South Pacific, about 12,000 miles away from Tasmania. These two islands, the North Island and the South Island, are separated by a small body of water called the Cook Strait. The landmass of New Zealand is about the same size of Colorado, and the capital city is Wellington. Other populous cities are Auckland, Dunedin, and Christchurch. New Zealand's wine history is a recent one. It wasn't until 1819 that the first vines were recorded being planted there, and not until the 1830s that wine production actually started to gain traction. However, it was still quite minimal, and beer was a more popular beverage. And then as you get into the 1900s and World War I, they didn't quite go into prohibition, but they did go into something called a 6 o'clock swill, where all bars, pubs, and everything would close down at 6 p.m. to encourage the men to go home to their women. What this did for the wine industry was prove to have more low quality grapes planted, just in case any prohibition laws would ever go into effect. They can sell their grapes as table grapes. And also, people were importing cheap wines. There wasn't really a market for quality wines. This history lasted for quite some time post World War I until about 1967 is when the official 6 o'clock swill ended. But then even from there, first commercial wineries weren't really coming around. You couldn't even sell bottles of wine at the wineries. And it wasn't until 1976 that the final dry areas of New Zealand were abolished. From the 1960s till now is really when you're seeing the modern history of viticulture in New Zealand. There was a dramatic increase in area designated to vineyards from about 1,000 acres in 1960 to about 10,000 acres today. In 1973, Marlborough had its first commercial winery, being Montana Winery, but in 1985, Cloudy Bay launched with Sauvignon Blanc and really put this varietal and this region on the map and the international stage. From the 1980s to now, there's been a focus on quality production, and the wineries grew from about 100 wineries in the 1980s to over 800 wineries today. In 2001, a screw cap initiative was launched in New Zealand, and this was a focus on sustainability. In 2002, we are now just getting into current wine law, and the New Zealand Wine Growers Organization started to map out regions of designation. It wasn't until 2006 that a Geographical Indications Registration Act was passed, and it wasn't actually put into action until July 2017. That means prior to July 2017, there were no designated areas by law. Now there are 21 official GIs in New Zealand. Their wine law follows the very common wine law of most New World regions of 85% rule, meaning 85% must be from the region, vintage, or varietal to be labeled as such. Sustainability is an integral part of New Zealand wine industry. New Zealand's winemakers and grape growers are committed to crafting exceptional wine while helping the natural environment, local businesses, and communities to thrive. New Zealand wine has 6 sustainability focus areas aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals of water, waste, pest and disease, soil, climate change, and people. They were the first wine industry to establish a sustainability program. Sustainable Wine Growing New Zealand first started as an industry initiative in 1994 and then was introduced commercially to the whole industry in 1997. So more than 20 years later, it is still widely recognized as world leading, with 98% of New Zealand's vineyards producing as a certified sustainable growing area. Organic grape and wine production is a growing part of New Zealand wine world. 10% of New Zealand wineries now hold organic certification, including many iconic world-renowned producers. New Zealand is the world's southernmost winemaking country. In its farthest reaches south, it sits at the 45th parallel. New Zealand is divided into North and South Islands. The North Island is typically warmer and rainier, and the South Island tends to be cooler and sunnier. The South Island has a larger landmass and is divided by a spine of the mountains of the Southern Alps. This creates a rain shadow effect of rain coming off the Tasman Bay for the eastern part of the island. The majority of vineyards are located within 20 miles of a coastline throughout New Zealand and none more than 80 miles. This creates a maritime climate throughout the region with moderated temperatures. New Zealand is a small island with little land to spare. It produces just 1% of the world's wine and on average commands a higher price point per bottle than any other country in the world. Sauvignon Blanc is by far the most widely planted varietal in New Zealand, and it put it on the map. However, other varietals are gaining popularity. You'll find cooler climate varietals on the South Island, like Pinot Noir and Riesling, and warmer climate varietals like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah on the North Island. But let's take a deeper look at Sauvignon Blanc. It is one of the top 10 most widely planted varietals in the entire world. It is a parent varietal to Cabernet Sauvignon along with Cabernet Franc. And May 3rd is International Sauvignon Blanc Day. It's a highly celebrated varietal. They say the name Sauvignon might come from the French word sauvage, which means wild, as the vines are reminiscent of wild grapevines. It is by far New Zealand's #1 varietal, with about 75% of all plantings in New Zealand being Sauvignon Blanc. It is the second largest region in the world where you can find Sauvignon Blanc, just after France's Loire Valley. It is perfect for the cool climate of New Zealand, and the classic descriptors for Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand are grapefruit, gooseberry, fresh cut grass, bell pepper, and honeydew. Those bell pepper notes, that kind of green note, is coming from a chemical compound in Sauvignon Blanc called pyrazines. We can't talk about New Zealand without talking about Marlborough. It is the country's largest wine growing region with over 50,000 acres of vines planted, around 2/3 of the national total. It is located on the northeast corner of the South Island. Marlborough is the sunniest and driest of all the subregions in New Zealand and has alluvial soils with a maritime climate. Sauvignon Blanc reigns king here, but up-and-coming varietals like Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, and Chardonnay are also planted here. Hawke's Bay is located on the North Island in the central part of the East Coast. It is the second largest wine growing region. The terroir here is warm, sunny, and dry, and is known for its gravel soils. It is best known for its red blends and Chardonnay, but aromatic whites are consistently good here as well, and Syrah is incredibly impressive. Central Otago is located at the central part of the South Island. It is the southernmost wine growing region in the entire world and New Zealand's third largest wine growing region. It is distinctly mountainous and perfect for Pinot Noir, which flourishes on its selected hillsides. Nelson is the sunniest subregion in all of New Zealand and is located at the northern tip of the South Island, with natural barriers of the Southern Alps and the Tasman Bay. It produces just 1% of New Zealand's wines. Aromatic Pinot Noirs, Chardonnays, and Sauvignon Blancs are extremely popular here, with an impressive mix of emerging varietals. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like below and also subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on other social media platforms at Copafina. Cheers!